West Coast.
We started far west and we're working our way to Chicago over
Which
a few
is close.
weeks, which is close. So it's been a ball. It's a trio, whole
Yep.
trio tour. So Jorge Roeder on bass, Eric Dube on drums.
And we're going to hear from Jorge later. You guys are going to play
we're
some
gonna play
stuff.
something for you.
So if you're watching this live, put your questions below. Hit us up on our YouTube page about any questions or put them in the comments below. And we're going to talk about guitars and gear. So first, as I step out, let's talk about, we're going to talk about the Tele and the Gretch. But
Okay.
tell us a little bit about the guitar you have here, Julian.
This is made by Nacho. It's considered a Nacho caster. It's Nacho famously wrote kind of the Bible about Blackguard Teles years ago in this beautiful book, the Blackguard book. Anyway, after some time, he started making replicas or recreations of guitars in his collection, and I had been hearing about him for a while, and I was like, I gotta get one of those. I was kind of obsessed, and if you look at his photographs, they're beautiful and they feel correct to the period. So we hit it off famously. I went to Spain, I tried a few of them, and the one I ended up getting is this one, which is basically based on a broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different than a Telecaster. There's little features that differentiate them. Has somewhat of a V-neck, kind of a small or medium-sized V-neck, which is great for me. Ron Ellis pickups, which some Nachos have them and some don't. I love Ron's pickups on any guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of the scheme with this. I want to say it's about 6.5 pounds.
Yeah.
I still have the 54 Tele that I've played for some time, and I prefer this. It works better with modern amps. It feels more comfortable.
Is there less anxiety when you're on the road?
No, I was never that anxious about the old one. I think you have every right to be, though. But that one was kind of, the one I own it was refinished. It was, I don't know. I was never worried. This just feels consistent, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And all of Nacho's guitars are great, and you know, there's a lot of great builders of Fender style guitars, but this has definitely been my favorite.
So before in kind of sound check, we were kind of walking through some of the pickup settings to kind of see what it sounded like in the room.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, kind of walk us through the different sounds and maybe demonstrate a little about each pickup. Yep.
Gladly, yeah. So right now, this is a four-way switch. So what we have is, this is the bridge.
Now this is with your JHS pedal on, right?
That's true. That's a little bit of the Morning Glory, which I love. And I use it really as a clean boost. That grid is kind of accentuated, but this guitar natively has some of that growl. In the middle, these are these two. And then here's the neck, which is probably my favorite. One, I guess I always get it wrong. I think is a series where you have the neck running through the bridge, so it's a louder setting. For me, that kind of promotes that like hollow percussive thing that Teles can have. That kind of like thup 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 sound. And but I live mostly in the neck pickup or the bridge. Every so often we'll do whole shows in the middle. If the room's especially dark and it's just not, there's a build up in the low end. But for many years I only used the neck pickup on Teles, and I had a lot of people say, you should give it a shot. The bridge isn't as bright as you think. And truth be told, I think Blackguard style Teles in the bridge pickup aren't necessarily brighter, which is what's so cool. I always worry that it would get kind of slinky or snappy, or you know, any of those qualities that I don't associate with the kind of music I tend to play. But the bridge is just, it's kind of rich and open, has beautiful overtones, and I think that's a testament to Ron's pickups too. I'm kind of obsessed with them.
When it comes to pickup settings, I mean, for me, I'm always feel like I'm flipping between different things on different songs. Are you more of a, this room's sounding good in this position, I'm just gonna kind of forget it and just play?
I leave it alone. I typically do, and then other considerations are usually at the pick level, you know, or maybe play lighter to get it warmer, or decisions about note choice, like really kind of basic musical stuff. That's my philosophy with it.
Speaking of picks, You're a blue chip guy?
I'm a total blue. I've been a blue chip guy since very early on.
Yeah.
I use what's called a TD50, and it's basically like a Fender shaped pick in what as close to an extra heavy as you could get. I love them. They're just my favorite. I've used a lot of stuff, and I think for someone looking for the right pick, I don't know that there's any one perfect choice. For the way I play, and I kind of beat up picks pretty easily, and I whack them against the bridge plate, and I shred them pretty easily. This is the only thing that works well for me.
I think last time you were here with Chris Eldridge.
Yeah, Chris Eldridge.
Is this the same?
It's the same thickness, but
okay.
I use a different shape with him.
I'm saying, have you worn that one out?
That one, that one might have died at one point. You can kill him. You definitely can kill him. And then you can play real tortoise. I know, which is those are endangered species. So the way you get tortoises, people will melt down old women's vanities or repurpose combs and make picks. And I've used those, and they sound incredible. But they're expensive. They don't last long, and they're hard to get. But if you're down for that, that's some of the best sound I've gotten from pick. Blue chip to me is way more ideal.
Can you walk us through some kind of different tones you can get just by accentuating the pickup?
Yeah, there's
or the pick.
Using the pick's kind of this. It's like it's definitely a utilitarian thing I think of. The lighter on this guitar, the lighter I play, and the more towards the headstock I play. There's like a real sweet kind of halo around the notes, in my opinion. It doesn't necessarily cut, but it has, especially in the right rooms and in the right reverberation, it can feel very sympathetic with an acoustic bass. And then even if I just stay in a similar position, let's say over the neck pickup, and I just dig in a little more. Certain things pop out. So my fascination is usually how do you kind of, in any given line, embed a few different colorations. So you'll have the dark, you'll have something stick out, you'll have something ring, you'll have something muted. And you have these kind of composites, and a lot of that I think is dependent on how you use the pick, not the majority, but just part of it.
Yeah.
And the Ron Ellis pickups, and with this gear, I feel like it responds. You ever play gear that doesn't really respond? You might be doing everything right, but what's coming through is pretty blunt or two-dimensional. Well, I favor this stuff because it kind of promotes that stuff I dig.
Yes, absolutely. Well, people have been watching on YouTube. We have some questions coming in. Are you ready for some quick ones?
Anything.
All right. Owen asks, is World's Fair going to be on vinyl?
Oh God, I would love for World's Fair. World's Fair is a soul guitar, acoustic guitar record I made years ago. I released it myself, and I don't even think we announced that it was out in the world. It was like we put it out there and just said, that feels really good, now let's go on to the next project. And as time has passed, I've grown to really appreciate that, and my team and I have always thought it'd be nice to re-release it on vinyl with a songbook and just kind of like almost reintroduce it, maybe at some pivotal moment.
And at least one of those tracks you've re-recorded electric.
Definitely. We recorded Ryland, which was something that was originally written for solo acoustic. So absolutely, vinyl is the plan, and it's either going to be us just paying to make it happen or pairing it with something else so it's more of a re-release.
Got it. Cool. Josh Brown, using 11 gauge strings? Or
these are 11 gauge D'Addarios. They're the NYXL series. Unwound third. I used a wound third forever, and I ended up breaking them so much.
On solid body guitars or arch tops?
Solid on everything.
On everything.
Everything. Okay. But they would break on this particular Telecaster a lot. So I thought, because we were playing places where they didn't always have specialized sets, I just kind of go with whatever you could get anywhere. But I actually love them. And I change my strings a lot. I like the way they sound new and old, which is, I think, kind of cool.
All right. Filippo asks, he's a big fan. He loves Sounding Point, the album. He wants to know if the sound, your guitar tone on Sounding Point, was that a blend of a mic'd amp and your mic'd guitar?
Yeah, it was. There's another third element, though, which is something called a Decca Tree. which is comes from when Decca, the label, would record a lot of classical music. They had this kind of they kind of pioneered a technique where you basically have this metal apparatus with mics hanging around them, and you put it in the middle of a room. And a lot of the mic sound from Sounding Point is all of our sounds hitting this Decca Tree that's kind of far away. So it's not, it wouldn't be fair to say it's just putting a close-up mic and micing an amp. It's kind of an elaborate setup. So look up Decca Tree and you'll know what I mean.
Okay.
Punch Brothers record, Punch, that was made similarly in the same room with the Decca Tree. There's a certain, again, it's that kind of halo thing. And that's a twin reverb, just kind of a stock, Linda Mann's Art Shop going through a twin reverb and a Decca Tree, as I remember.
Got it. All right. Other people are now asking about what amp you're playing through today.
This amp is awesome. It's a Vibro Deluxe made by Magic Amplifiers. Magic is basically Mike Moody, who's a brilliant musician, sound engineer, and an amp creator. And I was looking for something that was basically a deluxe reverb, but with a lot of the qualities that I associate with the really good ones, you know, and not to say that the new ones aren't great, because I love some of the new ones, but every so often you'll just find one that's the perfect balance of warm and bright, and he seemed to have the same sensibility. And he makes great tweed amps. I play one of his tweed champs sometimes, and one of his Princeton style amps. But Magic amps are great. They're solid, and they sound really like the best ones I've played.
Because I think last time you rolled through, you had a tweed champ thing going on.
I had an original tweed. I used to travel with a 58 tweed, or that was the one I was using at that time was a 59 or 60. And then we also have a 58 at home. Those are great too. You know, they all have their own parameters, and I kind of think of them as governors. Like I don't usually like gear that doesn't challenge me in some way. I want something to say, well, can you make this work? And it's part of the fun. It's a little masochistic, but it's fun. And the champ was a great exercise in that.
And that was one thing I learned about you when we did the feature on ArcLight.
Yeah,
is that, you know, the Telecaster itself kind of, you got to fight it a little bit. It's not too forgiving.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's the Telecaster is like, you know, ubiquitous. It's like everyone knows about them. It's not a secret. But I definitely utilize it as kind of like a thermometer of sorts. You know, it tells me how I'm doing, and if it's not happening, it's usually not the Telecaster's faults. It just might exaggerate some things that aren't always pretty. And I think when we think of not pretty, we think of high end as being this revealing. Yeah, treble. Oh, it's too shrill, but I kind of love it because it also has this cut and this power. So if you play your cards right, you get the delivery mechanism and the content. So that's, again, I'm obsessed with this stuff.
Well, I think maybe it's time to bring Jorge up. And
my
and
dear
play
friend,
a
and compatriot, this is Jorge Roeder, and we were going to play, are you good? You're all settled? We're going to play a tune, an Ornette Coleman tune, that we've just been loving lately, called Tomorrow is the Question.
on, fellas. Thank you, Jorge,
Thank you
for stepping in playing. We're going to hear back more from you in a little bit. But tell us kind of, you talk about it's an Ornette Coleman tune. I'm always interested when people pick kind of these under-the-radar tunes by these jazz musicians, how you first kind of came into touch and knew that tune and learned that tune.
That's a great question because it's true. People find things in a variety of ways. I don't consider myself a great detective when it comes to music. I know people who have heard every record by everybody and they manage to catalog them in a way that directly relates to their musicality. If you ask me a record I've been listening to, I probably couldn't tell you. I don't log things very well. That was from a record that Eric Dube, our drummer, was talking about one day because he said, "Have you ever heard Ornette with Shelly Manne?" Because Shelly Manne's the drummer on that, and I believe Percy Heath for most of it, playing bass, and Don Cherry. And Shelly Manne, someone I think of as like a beacon of a certain air of swing, and you could even argue a certain kind of conservative nature, albeit wild in its own ways. I thought that was so fascinating how Ornette would interact with that. And so I just kind of became obsessed with that interplay on that record.
What's the name of the record?
It's called Tomorrow's the Question. Okay. It's the title track.
Yep.
There's a bunch of like Ornette hits on that record. A lot of things that...
Hits.
It really, like I think Rejoicing is from that, and in other words, I can't remember, but things he did later and things he did with Pat. And anyway, so that relationship always kind of spoke to me of music that sounds maybe swinging and straightforward, but has this kind of weirder avant touch. And so that one just kind of stuck, and so I learned it, and as simple as that.
There you go.
Just learned it.
Well, the people have been clamoring to also hear this Gretch that's sitting there. So can we swap out guitars?
I'll show you,
and hear a little of that?
Absolutely. This is a great guitar. Let me figure out how to put it on.
That's the trick.
It's always something. It really is. Okay. I got to turn down the amp for this, though, a little bit, probably. Okay, so this is a 1953 Duo Jet. And it went back to Gretch, I think, in 57 or 58 and got a new neck. That's why it's got these markings with this body. So the body and pickups, everything's 53, and this is 58, I want to say. I've played, I never took note of Gretches, to be honest. Growing up, I knew about them through the Beatles and Chet Atkins, and I thought they were cool, but I didn't really have access. Until recently, I played one of Jeff Tweedy's Duo Jets, and it was at the Loft in Chicago, and it was remarkable. And it just kind of had this thing that I've been looking for a while. What's interesting about these is that they're very much hollow. You know, there's these two big bars that go in the middle. So despite it having the look and temperament of a Les Paul in a way, it's light and it's very dynamic. And probably most interesting about it are these pickups, these DeArmond pickups, which I had heard were really special and kind
original pickups.
Yeah, original pickups, and even the new ones, they're great. Just the concept is so interesting with these individual magnets and the way they're wound. There's just kind of good construction. So I got a new Gretch, like their version of an old one, and they're wonderful too. And then and I really love that guitar. But a friend of mine, he had this in Brooklyn, and I just said, would you sell it? Would you consider it? And he was very gracious, and I've been using it on the road as kind of part of our show. I'll play it for you. So here's the neck pickup. It's quite dark. Here's the middle, and this is with both pickups full volume, but I'll show you in a second. You can adjust that. Neck pickup, like a kind of like a Gibson, you can turn that down all the way off and you get just bridge. So I like it for that too. I can favor the bridge but just throw in a little neck. And then when you're in the full bridge, it's just also got a master volume. And so I think this guitar, this particular one at its best, is with everything at 10. The master volume cranked, and then the amp quite a bit louder. And that's why I wasn't playing with Jorge, because it wasn't necessary. But it has this bloom that's just so divine, and kind of like a Telecaster, like a Bizarro World Telecaster. Anyway, so I'm very into this.
So in the course of a night, your Tele is kind of your main one. So what songs would you bring something like this out for?
We've been playing some ballads that kind of like.
So with the loudest guitar, you play those ballads?
Yeah,
on. Okay.
Because then I can play the lightest, and a little bit goes a long way. So there's a sustained component to that too. Stuff behind the bridge. It's funny because it sounds so good quiet. It's just like, it's a very dynamic instrument. I'm fascinated by it. And it's, again, the secret's out of the bag about this one too. A lot of people know that. I hadn't thought about it in my sphere until I played that one of Jeff's, and I thought, okay, this is a special concept. Yeah. So
you mentioned hanging out the loft, trying Jeff Tweedy's guitars, and it kind of just came out that you just recently recorded your next album.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that kind of came together and who's on that record.
Absolutely. Well, Jorge wrote her on bass, of course, and on drums. It was Jorge and I played with a lot of different drummers in different configurations, and for this particular record, there was two things that were important. One was that it was a band that was kind of almost a special edition version of ours. We wanted something that was, for a variety of reasons that I don't need to go into, we wanted something that was just like, what would be fun to go into for a weekend and do this thing that we won't ever get to do usually. And also the other thing is we wanted to do covers, and we wanted to do kind of maybe more left-leaning versions of covers, meaning more avant-garde, more improvised based. So the drummer is Dave King from the Bad Plus, who's a brilliant musical force.
And one of the funniest guys.
And one of the funniest
ever.
human beings of all time. And he was a friend of ours, and we were kind of plotting for a while to do something, and it wasn't the time to do, we weren't looking for what we had done, or we weren't trying to even pair it up with a whole tour. It was like a special edition. So we went to the Loft because we had mixed our previous record, Modern Lore, there, with Tom Schick, who's a wonderful engineer and does all the Wilco stuff, all Jeff stuff. And we wanted to see what it'd be like to track, so we made a record of like total jazz style, a day and a half tracking, mixed it immediately, done, and I'm thrilled about it. I can't tell you much more, but it's pretty. Okay. It's very good. I think it's very good. I think it's strong.
2019, that's coming out. Probably?
I think so. That's the thought. On the top of the year, we'll release it, and you might hear glimpses of it before then, too.
And well, speaking of glimpses, I think you just released a live track with that band.
That exact band. Yep. We did, again, talk about special edition. We had one show in this whole tour where it wasn't our usual setup, and so we took a different tact, and it was with Dave and Jorge at this Phantom Music Festival, and we recorded the whole show. It was recorded for a radio broadcast, and anyway, I loved how it all came out, and specifically Atlantic Limited, which is a tune that for most of the touring life of that record has been concise, very much like the album. And this was the first night we kind of broke down the walls and said, just let's take it as far out as it needs to, let's play as long as possible, which aren't always the things you tell yourself in the studio, but live it just made sense. Yeah. That combined with Jorge and Dave's chemistry, I just thought, well, yeah, let's put this out in the world.
Yeah, Atlantic Limited, right?
Atlantic Limited.
All right, more questions are coming in about, we mentioned the JHS pedals. You have a small little pedal board, which seems to have grown since last we connected.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not much for pedals, I don't utilize them all that creatively, but I'm always looking for pedals that kind of make a bigger amp feel like a small amp. So that's what I'm dealing with.
So walk us through. It's going from your guitar into what first?
It goes into this Shinai big pedal, which is basically big with one as the I. That pedal functions kind of like an API preamp if you were to go right into an API console. It's not on currently, but for a lot of tours where I don't have my own amplifier, that is a lifesaver. Basically, it's almost like having a mastering component. If you can envision that, you plug into an amp, that's fine, maybe a little bright, maybe just dull. With this on, it kind of becomes a little more, I should show you the Tele just because that'll be a better benchmark than this beast. It kind of just cleans up the high end and focuses the low end, but has a lot of shimmer. I mean, I know it sounds like just words, but like if we take off this, the overdrive, so turn up the amp to where it was. If I turn that on at basically a low setting. My feeling is that both sounds are fine, but when it's on, it just creates a little bit of air.
Yeah.
It promotes this ether around your stuff, and has saved me so much. The JHS, as you know, that's like just a great overdrive. Here's it with it off. Here's with on. So compresses. But what I like about it is when I dig in, it deals with the transients really well. It kind of like barks and then slowly comes back to neutral. This next pedal, this is bad planning. You shouldn't put a small tuner this far into your pedal board, because then what happens is you use it, and then I end up turning off the other pedals with my foot. So this is just that's bad planning. But this is one of those Sonic Research tuners. I learned about it through my classical bass playing friends who, kind of coming out of the Edgar Myers, Paul Cowart school. They all use it because it's for the most part very accurate. I prefer a Peterson strobe tuner, and I used to travel with one, and I love them, and I think they're great. And if not that, I'll just use a tuning fork. I'm pretty obsessed with tuning forks, but for live purposes, that's great. And then I have a Flint Strymon, as many do, and I pretty much always have a little bit of reverb on. I don't use the tremolo, or is that tremolo? Yeah. I didn't know if it's vibrato or tremolo, but that just sounds clear, and I've used a lot of reverbs.
Because on the amp, you're plugged into the normal channel.
I prefer the normal channel.
Which doesn't have vibrato and reverb.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yep. But the reverb on that is wonderful, too. I should show you as a shout out to him. Let me see. Kind of Fender-y thing, which I love too. The less knobs and the better. My fantasy is still the Champ, which is one knob. And
well, it's fun. We just today actually we are putting up a rig rundown with Ben Harper.
Oh wow!
Where he goes through all his stuff.
Oh
and
my God! I'm sure
one of the things that kind of made me think of you is that he's like, I've always been on this journey to try to get to the point where I can go guitar into amp.
Yeah.
And he's like almost there.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. He has like one overdrive and a volume pedal and a tuner. But it's
getting there.
You're just kind of working towards that.
There's
goal.
Something really great about that. And it's achievable.
Yes. So one of the other things that you've been doing on this tour is a couple pre-show masterclasses.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about how kind of education factors into the realm of your touring and gigging and recording life.
Well, that's a great great question, because I started teaching when I was really young, and I was always I think myself as a total student, as cliche as that sounds. It's like I really do love the process of seeking out people who know either a little bit or a lot more than you, and just the humility of it, and saying, look, what are you doing? What's going on? So I believe in that chemistry. However, as I started touring more and recording more, I felt a little bit like there's a syndrome that can happen where you start to teach one way, and then you try to do all the things you teach to justify teaching them. And there were many things where I started to feel like, well, this is expired. Like, yeah, that's how I taught people to hold a pick for a while, but I actually hurt myself, and that's a terrible thing, and I shouldn't have ever said, So I just kind of threw it all out, baby out with the bathwater. I was like, I don't want to teach. I don't want to have put a flag in the sand. I don't want to say this is how it's done, because I don't know. I'm like anybody else trying to figure it out. So the concept of a master class in these shows, the way it worked was, logistics-wise, it worked out, where we're playing these markets, and we thought, well, I know there's other fellow kind of nerds like me there, and it'd be fun to have almost like a town hall dialogue about the state of what we're working on. But also, furthermore, I started thinking about how the thing that could be nice is I could kind of discuss some of the things that surprise me, that the things that are omitted from a lot of guitar pedagogy that surprise me. And it's less with, has less to do with like creative ways to do any one activity, because there's so many good efforts in the world. You know, effort sounds pejorative. There's so many good ideas, and it's amazing. But what I always feel is missing is someone who or understanding how to process all the information. So okay, so you're confronted with this amazing information, and you know in theory that it'll make you better. But what does that mean for your band rehearsal on Tuesday? And what does it mean for the demos you're making or your own musical quest? And though it can sound kind of conceptual and whatever, it's actually there's some real practical things. And so this was an experimental run. We've done a few of them now. And each time I was very delighted that that what I struggle with resonated with other people. Like things like, do you feel like you're a better musician than you sound like? A lot of times, you know, there's kind of a divide between your musicianship, the stuff that's it's cool in the world. You have this fine-tuned sense of it, and then you pick up the instrument, and somehow that's not conveyed, and it's not necessarily conveyed because you suck or because you practice the wrong thing, and it's this. There's some other stuff there, and so it's been delightful. It's about just a little under an hour. We do it 45 minutes, and we hand out some stuff I wrote for a John Zorn book.
I was going to say, that's a shout out to that.
Yeah.
Is it Arcana?
Yeah, Arcana. He was Zorn, the great composer, saxophonist, conceptual artist, everything. He every year, I think, for the last 20, he's been putting out these compendiums of essays and articles by musicians in the community, his community and our collective community. And they can be about anything that you want to pass on to another musician. So I wrote something called 12 Observations About the Guitar, and they're just kind of these things that I think are really important that no one seems to talk about, and probably because not a lot of people care, but I care. And I was able to put them in a fashion that was shareable, and this is all what we kind of get into in the Masterclasses. So hopefully we'll do more.
Yeah, I highly recommend. There's also some other great stuff from other guitarists and stuff in
there.
Dude,
the history, I mean, I remember getting an early edition with a Frizzell essay about how he would finger scales and using open strings that changed my life. Yeah. Not to mention all the non-guitar player concepts. So Arcana, check them out. There's 20 of them. You can buy them online. Yeah,
they're really great. So tell us, we're going to wrap up here with a tune with Jorge again here in a second, but tell us what you got going on kind of for the rest of the year. You're on this tour, and then you're headed to Europe,
We go to Europe. Yeah, we go to Europe for about a week of duo touring, Jorge and I.
Okay.
And we work our way to northern kind of Scandinavian territories, where we meet up with Kenny Wollesen, and it'll be a trio with Jorge and Kenny for a while, for a few weeks. Excuse me. And then we go into kind of a John Zorn marathon of sorts in a few different places, starting in Sarajevo and then going to maybe Den Bosch and Vienna, right? Jorge will be a part of a lot of projects. We'll be doing the music of Zorn with lyrics by Jesse Harris, sung by Petra Hayden. That'll be a band that we have. I'll be doing some music with Guion Riley, incredible guitar player, brilliant acoustic nylon string player, and from the classical and avant-garde and new music world. We'll also be doing performances in Sarajevo of Insurrection, which is like a shred metal project of Zorn's that I'm in. Matt Hollenberg is the other guitar player. Kenny Grahowski on drums and Trevor Dunn. It's amazing. It's loud. And it's kind of the Philly crew of metal guys, and I somehow fell into it. And then we'll be premiering a new trio with myself and Guion and Frizzell, doing music inspired by St. Francis. I forget what that's called. I can't teach you. Anyway, it's a group of songs that we'll be playing for the first time there as a guitar trio. That's all under the auspices of a Zorn marathon.
I'm really sad to hear that you're not keeping busy.
Yeah, I know my lady's like, you gotta stop at some point.
So, all right, well, let's bring Jorge in and let's wrap this up. Thanks for everybody tuning in and watching. And thanks again to Julian and Jorge for stopping by yet again and making time for us. So what are you going to play here to close it out?
We'll play you The Ramble, which is a song from Modern Lore and something we play at our shows and rarely play as a duo. So thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. you.